The topic for today is adaptation in food security, climate smart agriculture. I think the reason I got invited to this was because with a couple of my co-authors, we wrote a policy brief which has been published as part of T20 on climate smart agriculture in India and G20. Our essential thesis in that was that on the one hand, there's a tremendous amount of data on climate. On the other hand, there's a tremendous amount of data on agriculture, but the two don't speak to each other in terms of making the agriculture smart, in terms of adaptation to the climate, short-term, long-term, geographically, and so on and so forth. So that is the focus of the discussion of this panel today. What we will do is we will go around the panelists. Each one of them will have about 6 minutes to speak. And then we will have time for question and answers the last 15 minutes. And first, I would like to start with Mr. Mir Mustaq Ahmad Robi, Member of the Parliament from Bangladesh.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Before I say something, I want to give thanks to ORF and other organizations, those who are related with this, and especially thanks to the Meghalaya government. With the help of the Meghalaya government, this, the workshop or conference, whatever we call it, has started. And they have organized it. We are invited here. And I, on behalf of Bangladesh and Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh and the Speaker of our Parliament, I give thanks to all of them and the concerned people. See, the subject is the smart agriculture and the food. But these are all related with the nature, environment, pollution, everything. These are all related nowadays. Though time is not that much given by the moderator, when we sat with the moderator before the discussion, he has warned us very carefully that we have to finish it within the shortest possible time. I just wanted to convey one thing, that our Honorable Prime Minister said that we have to go for the smart Bangladesh. So it is all related with the, if it is agriculture or the whatever, the country, the people and everything. And he has also very categorically, she has said several times that 1 inch land should not be vacant. We have to cultivate every places. Nothing will be kept vacant. As you know that when we got our independence, at that time our population was 7 crore, 7.5 crore people. Now we are about 17 crore people. Naturally, you can very well understand that our food and agriculture has developed a lot, and this is how we have been taught, and we are working on this very seriously so that nobody is foodless, nobody is homeless, everybody is getting all sort of facilities which is required for them. And that is why we are working, and we are highly successful about this. We are always inspired by our Honorable Prime Minister. What I wanted to tell that our country wanted to be, the digital Bangladesh she declared in 2014. Country is fully digitalized, and because of the digitalization, we have got a lot of, the development, a lot of things has taken place in our country. And we can do a lot of good things. And then after that, now she has declared for the smart Bangladesh. That I exactly wanted to say. But as you know, that the corona has spoiled our, the memory and a lot of things. Whenever we say that has to be told to right now, that we just forget. Anyway, so as I said, that everything is so related, the environment, the pollution, then the nature and the food, all are related. Everybody should understand that, and that is why we talk, we motivate the people, we go for the counseling. Everything is required over the world. In the global world, you see, whatever we do, we cannot do for ourselves only. We have to think about the other part of the country. And as this is how we are groomed, and we are trying to, groom the people. And the whole world, everybody depends on others. So we have to work in such a way so that nobody is deprived and nobody deprived for anything. So there are a lot of things to discuss, but what I wanted to say that globally, we have to work unitedly. And one thing I wanted to, before I conclude, one thing I want to say, the nature we have spoiled for a long time back. So now again we are trying to, how to improve the nature, how to develop the nature. So it's very difficult, but we have to work. As the Honorable, the Chief Minister has categorically said, they have a lot of coal and a lot of things. Even the Chief Secretary of this state has categorically said that they have a lot of coal, but instead of coal, the power, they are going for the energy. I mean, the satellite. I mean, what is that? Solar energy. They're trying to establish that, and that too, he has very categorically said the longevity of the solar, because there are some sort of things which we also did in our country. It does not last long, so we have to go for such a solar system so that it lasts long and people get the benefit out of it. Anyway, so these are the things, and the food security is all related: food, water, environment, nature. These are all related, and these are very important topic, important issue. So if we are careful and if we think about it very seriously, then we can do something better for the coming future and coming generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mir Mustaq Ahmad Rabi, for finishing on time. I really appreciate your giving a country-based, top-down perspective, the importance of a national commitment to that, and the Prime Minister's, the President's commitment to it, and also the whole movement towards digitalization, how it can affect not just the agriculture part of the country, but other sectors of the country too. Now for a sort of, not a contrarian, but a micro perspective, I request Mr. Kumar to take this thing. So Kumar, yes, you can please.
Very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. So I represent Meghalaya. In fact, whatever I say with respect to Meghalaya is equally applicable to the hilly states of the entire northeastern region. So we are a food deficit state. So whatever we produce is barely sufficient to meet the requirements of about 30% of our population. So the rest has to be brought either from outside or through public distribution system. That's how it's been going on for centuries. So it must be coming across as a paradox because we have rains. In fact, we don't have a shortage of monsoons. And we also have land. But how is it that we are a food deficit state? This is one question that we will have to ask ourselves. Because those who know our state know that we have 7 months rain. So when it is wet to the bone. And the next 5 months, when it is dry, it is bone dry. So you can just well imagine why this kind of a skew in monsoons impacts our food grain production scenario. And that is equally applicable to most of the northeastern states. So the upshot of this kind of a very wayward kind of monsoon or wayward kind of rains is that we do not have a second crop in the state of Meghalaya. So actually, if we could produce in the second crop, in fact, we would have become fully self-sufficient in food grains, but that doesn't happen. In fact, only 4.38% of our land is irrigated. And irrigation is very, very expensive in hilly states. So therefore, we are not in a position to provide from the government side. I'll contrast it with Tamil Nadu, one of the states in South India, which receives 3 times less rainfall than us. Their annual rainfall is about 988 millimeters. And our annual rainfall is 2,818 millimeters. So you can see that they receive 1/3 less rain, but they produce 3 crops of paddy. Whereas we receive 3 times more rain, but we produce just 1 crop of paddy. That is the impact of climate on the people who live here. And this is equally applicable to other states also. Once again, I'm repeating at the cost of repetition, let me say this. So we were just estimating, if we have to provide assured irrigation to our state, to the last acre, how many years it will take for us to really assure that kind of a thing. And we realized that it will take 1,000 years for us at the rate at which we are going. We provide additional irrigation to about 258 acres every year. And at this rate, to irrigate about 2.58 lakhs of land, which is hectares of land, which remains fallow the whole of winter season. And that is one of the serious problems that we will have to address. And that is what is leading us to this fragility when it comes to food security in the entire Northeast and mostly our state. And what is the solution? The second crop, the residual moisture of the first season is not sufficient to support the second crop of paddy, because paddy is as you know, is a water guzzling kind of a crop. So therefore we cannot go for paddy. And wheat, there is no local consumption at all. So in the whole of Northeast, people don't really consume wheat. So what is the alternative? And after years of search, we finally discovered buckwheat. Buckwheat is one crop which is likely to really fulfill all the requirements of a fragile state, fragile from the point of food security state like Meghalaya, and not just Meghalaya, the whole of Northeast. And why do we think so? Because it doesn't require much water. The residual moisture is sufficient enough to give us the production. Secondly, it is a very short duration crop. You plant it immediately after the harvest of paddy, and within 3 months it gives you the yield. Thirdly, it's a nutritionally dense crop. It's not a cereal, it's actually a pseudo-cereal. So when it is nutritionally dense, it also has a very good balance of protein, unlike rice and wheat. And fourth thing, which is most important, is that it has 0 gluten. In fact, India is emerging as the diabetes capital of the world. So predominant cause behind all this is this high glycemic index crops like rice and wheat. So if only we could substitute one day, a day will come hopefully, rice and wheat with buckwheat, the world would be a healthier place. This is our belief. With that conviction, we have started. People did not know what buckwheat was here. So we brought the seed from elsewhere and we tried. From 0 acres, we have just last week I have assessed. So we have touched 200 acres in just about 2 years' time. And here we also have a little global situation here. Russia is the largest exporter of buckwheat, and Japan is the largest importer of buckwheat. And some of you from Southeast Asia would know about soba noodles, and it's a very, very popular popular noodles of Japan. Now, because of this geopolitical situation, now Russia is not able to supply anymore to Japan. And Japan is desperate to source buckwheat from anywhere else in the world. And they have identified Meghalaya as one of the states where we have ideal conditions for producing buckwheat. And India, as it is importing buckwheat. So it can also be an import substitution product. This is one example I want to see. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not that we were smart when it comes to climate or anything like that. We did not even understand all those things when we were actually going ahead. All that we did was we didn't want to keep the land fallow for almost 7 months, 6 to 7 months a year. And that problem has led us to a solution which is turning out to be climate smart. And it's not that we were intelligent enough to understand this, but after we have started it, we have understood that this is one of the best crops that the whole country, whole world should adopt for climate smart agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumar. I think it was a nice segue in terms of Mir Ahmad Robi talking about the global problem, and Kumar highlighted how even for global problem, the solutions have to be localized and micro-localized and adapt to the conditions and adapt to the situation. Next, we are going to go to Akanksha Khatri. Akanksha works for the World Economic Forum. She is going to give a somewhat European and a different perspective on this. Again, the problem is the same, but the solutions are different. So, Akanksha, it's yours.
Thank you. And also thanks to ORF State of Meghalaya for this T20 event. As the moderator said, I'll try to bring in perspective from two pieces. One, really looking at the systems view, and then the second would be seeing how that plays out in a different geography in Europe. Just remembering in 1992, some of us were younger than the others, there were three conventions which were adopted in Rio. There was the Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the Convention on Land Desertification. Agriculture is one place where all of these three conventions come to play. And as India is looking at its targets both for climate, biodiversity, India has been supporting the 30 by 30 goal as well, and has also committed to making sure that around 33% of its land is under some sort of a forest cover, which is also community managed. How we do agriculture is going to determine our progress on each of those three sets of goals. Why do I mention this? Because agriculture and land, the way we look at it, has to combine all the system. So if we look at it from the point of risks and opportunities, I mean, those are the two things that businesses always look at in their balance sheet, is on the risk side, if we don't do agriculture properly, we are looking at the crisis of water scarcity, pollution. A lot of the agriculture runoff actually finds its way into our river systems and freshwater sources. Soil degradation. According to our research at the World Economic Forum, the top soil health globally is only at 55% right now, which means that the topsoil degradation crisis is rapidly coming to us. And then the last piece is just resilience to price fluctuations and resilience against food security for all our people. So that's really on the risk side of things. But then let me also not leave you with just doom and gloom and try to remind that there are also opportunities. And one such opportunity is starting to look at land as an asset class. Someone once told me that we look at mud as just dust, just something that you need to clear off. But a healthy soil, that's the asset we should be investing in. So one vision for the state of Meghalaya, for India, but for farmers everywhere. Today, farmers earn income from what they produce, right? So it's the production of the food or the cash crop. Would it not be wonderful that the farmers were also being paid for, not just for the food and cash crop, but also the ecosystem services that they were providing? So a farmland or even a patch of land could provide, maybe it could provide moringa, it could provide mangoes, but it can also provide healthy soils and clean water. And this is the kind of work that we've been trying to do in Europe. The forum, as part of the program on nature and climate, launched something called a 100 Million Farmers Initiative. Now, this is a global initiative, and this was really just a back of envelope calculation, that if you look at 100 million farms, not farmers, that would constitute to approximately 20% of the world's farms. And anyone who has ever studied systems change would know that if you tip 20% of any system, be it economic or social, that's when you tip the system. So if we could get 100 million farmers to adopt climate-smart, biodiversity-rich, water-resilient agriculture, we could make sure that agriculture, which today is a big driver of greenhouse gas emissions, could actually become part of the solution. So that's just an idea I wanted to leave. We did a significant amount of survey in Europe, speaking to the farmers in Europe, where also there is significant lobby of not moving away from chemical-based input towards more bio-based input on agriculture. And the top challenges that everybody talks about is one on transition finance. Because whether we like it or not, at least in the 2 to 3 years when you're transitioning, the yield will take a hit. After that, the soil, after that, nature will bounce back and we'll be fine. But then who's going to provide that transition finance? And that's where we at the World Economic Forum believe that we can do more of a public-private collaboration and blended finance models. The second is capacity. Now, this is a very unique state in Meghalaya where community and regenerative agriculture has been part of practices, but most other parts of the world in the last 150 to 200 years have moved to mechanized farms and heavy industrial agriculture. So if we have to move away from a form of agriculture which was just yield, yield, yield and increase productivity to something which is looking at regenerative and a triple bottom line of yield and productivity, livelihoods, but also environmental outcome, we need a different capacity. So I'm just going to leave us all here with the idea that what we need to shift towards is not to work in silos, but to start looking at the triple planetary win. So both on livelihoods, environment, but then also people. So with that, over to you.
Thank you, Akanksha, finishing just on time. I think Akanksha has put in a somewhat different dimension to the discussion, a few points, there may be others. One is she highlighted the interdependence of sectors and also the notion of land as an asset, which may be particularly important, asset owned by whom? Individual, the community, or like the Mapuches owned by none, sort of a thing. Mapuches are in Chile. So that is an important question that needs to be addressed. And then also, Akanksha talked about the monetization of ecosystem services, which is what, in a sense, Meghalaya is experimenting with. But one may also raise the question, traditional farming without monetization has been providing ecosystem services. I'm not saying there is a straightforward answer to this, but when you think of traditional knowledge and traditional practices and bringing them, I think these are the issues that need to be considered when you take the European experience, the Indian experience, the Meghalaya experience, and the global experience. So with that, I'm going to shift next to Stefania Petrucelli. She's a researcher and writer. Stefania.
Thank you, and also thanks to our ORF. So, as the president of Future Food Institute, Sara Roversi, always says, everything on Earth is connected. Plants and animals, natural and human ecosystems. It is impossible to consider each of these parts without the networks. Closer, I'm sorry. The networks of relationships and mutual exchanges that result. If nature and humans are linked, then the health of one is linked to the health of the other one. There are not two isolated crises, one environmental and other social. There is a single complex one that affects nature and humans. And this was confirmed by the latest IPCC report, which highlighted the unequivocal human responsibilities in the climate emergency and the social consequences, water and food insecurity, and risk to cities and infrastructures, and serious health problems. All these phenomena specifically affect regions defined in the IPCC 2023 as highly vulnerable to climate change. And their death from extreme events like storms are 15 times higher than in the rest of the world. And the paradox is that these countries, which account for about half of the global population, are the least responsible for climate urgencies, despite being the most affected. Therefore, I was not surprised to note that the IPCC brings back as a solution to contrast the emergency something I have understood since I have been working for Future Food Institute, and which I heard just now during the speech of the Chief Minister of Meghalaya, that the activation of an integrated approach, one that boosts sustainable development and at the same time protects nature, an integral ecological regeneration. And this can start from marginal areas, such as Meghalaya, rich in dormant resources that can be transformed into laboratories for the future, into mines of vital resources that guarantee oxygen, biodiversity, food of great quality, and life to cities, territories, and potentially, because this model is exportable, humanity. Change in food, electricity, transportation, industry, buildings, and land use, but also the political, economic, environmental, human, social spheres are possible with what Future Food Institute calls integral ecology, an harmonious ecosystem between man and nature, capable of regenerating itself and sustain itself over time. And for this integral regeneration to be realized, 6 areas need to be addressed: the political area, the environmental area, the human area, the social area, the cultural area, and the economic area. But I want to focus on another paragraph of the IPCC, the one on health and nutrition. The IPCC points out that one of the possible strategies to contrast the global emergency is healthy, balanced, and sustainable diets. And, I quote, contribute to nutrition, health, biodiversity, and other environmental benefits. I realized that it is possible when I first went to the place where Future Food Institute had applied its integral ecologic model, Pollica, a village in the south of Italy where the Mediterranean diet was born. Mediterranean diet, which is a concrete example in itself of integral ecology. I understood that it is possible to safeguard the environment, benefit new generation, and ensure social justice with a sustainable and integral development model based on food understood as a lifestyle that protects biodiversity, soil, landscape, sea, and individual and community well-being. So, by placing a healthy and sustainable lifestyle based on food at the center, it is possible to fully regenerate the area I have mentioned. And I think that this is possible also with the project of Meghalaya. Thanks.
Thank you, Stefania, for finishing absolutely on time. I think in many ways, Akanksha talked about the interdependence of sectors. I think Stefania broadened the range of sectors where the interdependence exists. And also, there are a couple of other points that I noted. There may be other things too. One is she highlights the problems of regeneration, and these sectors have to act with each other to regenerate. Regenerate means that it is it's a positive reinforcing feedback loop that continues. But another important point that I think we all need to address is the inequalities or the inequities. The contributors to this are not the ones that are correcting the problem. The ones that are correcting the problem are not the contributors to the problem. And what happens when that balance is restored, will it be sustainable? I think that dynamic equilibrium is going to be a challenge that may need to be addressed. So I'll go to the last panelist, that is Jaivir Singh. And Jaivir, it's yours for the next 6 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to try to catch up as best as I can, being the last on the panel, but also because I think for most of you who've been through your conference manifest, We have a small report in there which we've partnered with ORF just a few months ago, which is concentrating on adaptation. And that's the lens that perhaps I just want to very briefly touch on a few points that are not theoretical examples, but ones that we in the private sector have in some ways neglected as we've looked at development and as we've looked at the social sector historically. So what we've tried to do over the last half decade or so, and this is across a range of landscapes, the Northeast included, is to be able to actually go to the grassroots and understand the interdependencies between what can be brought to the table as we think about localized knowledge which is existing, how is that being replaced by the new markets model, and is there a space for both of those to be brought together for us to find solutions as we think about more sustainable futures? Let me bring those alive with a few examples. We work in places like Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh, where when we first went in, we found a 1,000-year-old wheat grain, 40% less water, 60% better on nutrition content, right? But it's about to be wiped out because we're looking for higher yield. We found the same thing as we've done projects in Arunachal Pradesh, where we've now been able to create sort of truly organic rajma, which we're now trying to do market connections because at the moment there are too many middlemen, and the benefit that would typically be seen as you think about organic being bought at the urban level does not get seen by the farmers themselves. So I think it's a point that the Honorable Chief Minister was making earlier as well. The lens that we're trying to use is to say that if we don't better and sustain livelihoods and have communities see benefit in the transition that all of us might be suggesting, this is not going to work for the future, right? So with community at the center and with some of that localized knowledge at the center, we're trying to do some programming which helps us take the benefits of a consultancy company, which I am an extension of, work along with government, local communities, and hopefully bring best practice. ORF, thank you for introducing me to a colleague who some of my colleagues in PwC have already been working with at the World Economic Forum to create adaptation strategies where the private sector can be involved. So our concentration will remain in some senses as we think about sustainable adaptation, because I do think that we're a bit way off as we think about the targets for 2030. And so a lot of our focus is going to be around that. And I just want to put it on this public platform as well, that as Meghalaya as a state, and thank you for hosting us, but as Meghalaya as a state looks at its solar program, as well as this Climate Change Institute, which is looking to create over the next year or so, we'd be more than happy to be a part of assisting that process and being a part of that journey along with you. So thank you, and thank you for having me here.
Okay, I love it when panelists finish ahead of time so that I don't have to raise my hand and say, running out of time. But thank you. I think we've got some very interesting points. I think just to paraphrase, or the points that I want to paraphrase from Jaiveer, is talking about localized knowledge and also traditional knowledge. And again, organic that the urban thinks may not be organic locally. And also, sometimes we get caught in the whole thing of efficiency and growth and quantity. The wheat that was 1,000 years old or however many years may not be as productive, but may be ecologically much more effective. So this sort of paraphrases the challenge that comes in it. I like the phrase that was used earlier, it has to be a public, private, and planet partnership. So I'm now going to open it up for discussion. I was told to cut the whole panel discussion short by about 5 minutes. So that gives us about 14 minutes for question and answers. So if there are questions from there, I would like to take them. If not, okay. There are 2 hands raised. Could somebody give them the microphone, please?
I'm Professor Joshi. I teach in a university here. I'm working on biofertilizer per se. My question is to Dr. Akansa. When you talked about bio-based solutions to, bring back agriculture where the land was probably left fallow, there were too much of chemicals being used. What kind of bio-based solutions are they using? Because if we talk about our perspective of state of Meghalaya, there are also places if you visit, you look at sacred groves, for example, just adjacent to the sacred grove, there is absolutely nothing. It's barren. If we try to involve community, we'll also have to develop certain bio-based solutions so that the trees grow. We have Cherrapunji, which is the heaviest rainfall area where there can be no replantation because we have waited for too long, the soil has eroded, the soil health has really gone bad. So this is another example that we see right here. What I'm talking about is, are these bio-based solutions very natively designed, or they are something which we call it as non-native or, imported from outside? Because when we are working with the shifting cultivation or any other crop, the kind of bio-based solution is not only the manure that we have.
Can we keep the questions short, please, so that
can you just highlight on what kind of bio-based are they? The native solutions with the organisms, because they are the ones being used, or something that is
Akanksha, would you like to
outside?
answer to that, please? No, why don't you go ahead with it then? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, by the way, for that question. And a little plug, since I have the opportunity, we will be releasing a report on the chemical sector's transition pathway for nature positive by September. And one of the pieces that we are looking at is indeed moving away from non-renewable to bio-based feedstocks. So your question, I could take it in two ways. In general, yes, the native species is better for soil health, but the challenge that you are raising is that the soil has completely been eroded. So there has to be some sort of a hybrid solution, which we are seeing everywhere in the world, is that we need to look at which is the most climate adaptable, climate smart option. Sometimes that option could be native. I think that the example Javid was saying, but in sometimes you will have to work with science and corporates to actually come up with a solution which is very localized. And we've been speaking with some of the top companies as well in this space. I mean, just because the variety worked 100 years ago, even if it is native, the situation is completely changed now. We're seeing this in Lebanon, we're seeing it in Switzerland. Even if you talk about farming on hills and mountains, the weather patterns are completely different. So just one answer is yes, we should go as much as possible to reduce chemicals and more bio-based, but whether that bio-based has to be native or not will depend on soil health.
Thank you, Akanksha. I think there was another question. Before we take that one, I just want to make an editorial comment. I think Akanksha highlighted something to me is important. Traditional knowledge is important, traditional knowledge is good, but traditional knowledge may not also be valid today. It may have to be re-engineered and modified. I think we need to take it with a sort of note of caution that just traditional knowledge, because it's traditional, may not be simply the sort of the magic solution to the problem. Okay, there was another question from
I'm Tanvir Shakil Joy, Member of Parliament from Bangladesh. I don't have a question. I just want to supplement with my senior Member of Parliament, the scenario in Bangladesh. We had our budget this year, and government allocated $3.5 billion US to the agriculture sector, and most of them is on climate smart agriculture. And we know that agriculture actually, is part of like global emission also. 20% comes from agriculture. And in Bangladesh, the crop production tripled, and in our total carbon footprint, around 40% is from agriculture. So we are in a very critical situation. So Bangladesh government has actually have a one of the world-renowned program, which we call Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, which actually encompasses our NDCs, NAP, and everything included. And there we are having emphasis on climate smart agriculture, like solar powered irrigation pump, zero tillage, better salinity resistant crops. And the northern part, we are having extreme heat problems, so we are promoting heat resistant crops. So my point is that these things we are doing, like India, Bangladesh, and the global south is doing, but we need very proactive approach from the global north, especially funding and also the technological transfer, because it's very important that for this climate smart agriculture, only the nature-based solutions, and as you rightly pointed out, our traditional knowledge will not suffice. So we need to have a better combination for that, and Bangladesh in climate smart agriculture is leading the way, but I think we need to have a better regional cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think also implicit, I'll come to in a second, and there's an implicit in this is that many of these solutions may have side effects. In other words, there was an article about Australia, for example. They started growing forests for the greenhouse emissions. The trees grew well, but the sheep grew and the methane emission grew. sort of a thing. So one has to be very concerned about everything is not positive. We need to balance. I think somebody else more pointed the importance of balancing things out. There are positives and negatives which we have to manage very acutely and very closely in order for it to be effective. Yes, sir, your turn.
Thank you so much. I'm Piyush Dogra. I'm a senior environment specialist with the World Bank office in New Delhi. I think I like the idea of Jay. Important point would be that we should have that PPP, the private sector participation, and especially in the area when we are talking about agriculture, agro-biodiversity. So it's not agriculture alone. When we are looking at climate smart agriculture, it needs to be aligned with the agro-biodiversity, agroforestry as such. And I would like to mention that in the context of Meghalaya, if we also look at Meghalaya or Northeast as such, if we look at this high biodiversity hotspot and look for low volume and high value products, probably that will change the whole scenario of economic development in the state, which is also becoming one of the discussion point. And forum would like to include that also as one of the point of discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to respond to that?
No, I just wanted to second. It's a statistic I just love saying, is that I think more than 70% of human calories today come from 3 crops: wheats, rice, and corn. So I think the agro-biodiversity, and that's where states like Meghalaya could really show the way, like what is more endemic. So whether it's buckwheat or it is something else, would be a solution.
Thanks, Akanksha. I think somebody else has the microphone. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ajit Sharma from the School of Livelihood. One very specific sector I would like to bring to notice and ask a question. That's localization of agriculture consumption.
Could you repeat the last part?
Localization of the agricultural consumption. Presently, we have moved largely, and in fact, Mr. Kumar also mentioned that, we have moved largely towards monocropping. And this monocropping is increasing the transportation costs. And during COVID, we have realized how localized production becomes more important. In India, in other countries, including in Europe, how supply of agricultural produce, be it vegetables or food grains, became a challenge. So this can majorly reduce carbon credits. So I would like to ask how World Economic Forum has worked around that.
Okay, the question goes back to I think the implicit point. Yeah, go ahead. You got it. You want to paraphrase it? Okay.
Just very quickly. So I think there are 2 pieces here. You are absolutely right on the trade and commodity side of things. And many of you would be aware right now, even in WTO, following the EU deforestation law, a lot of developing countries are pushing back because the EU deforestation law means that any kind of imported deforestation needs to be paid for. So I cannot get cheap avocados from Latin America and enjoy them in Europe if I'm not paying for the externality. So I'm fully with you on that. The way we at the forum are looking at it, we will start some work actually on valuing natural capital as well as ecosystem services, and what is the fair share of responsibility between Global North and Global South, because most of the consumption today happens in Global North.
Thanks, Akanksha. Mir Ahmad Robi wants to make one last point. I will give him an opportunity to do that, and then I have another 4 minutes or 3 minutes after that. So I'll just give around the panels and see if they want to make a last statement. All right?
Thank you very much. Now, I just wanted to share with everybody that in our country, we are giving a lot of, the support to the cultivators for developing the agriculture and to grow the agriculture in a broader way. We're putting them seed without the money, then feed, lot of things we are providing them every year. Thousands of crore, the Bangladeshi taka we are giving them. This sort of support we are giving them to encourage the cultivators to grow the, agriculture. This is one way. Another thing is we have research team. The research team are trying to cultivate, suppose the tomato. Suppose it does not take place in summer, but the research people are finding out how we can make the tomato or get the tomato in summer. So this is how our agriculture ministry is also supporting the the agriculturist to develop all these things. And this is how we have developed a lot. And over the world, probably we are in third position as far as agriculture is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There's one quick question. Yes, sir. Quick one and a quick answer to that.
Thank you. One reflection that it's a very dynamic situation. So, Jaivir, question to you, particularly your commercial side of things in PwC, the whole practice of strategic environmental impact assessment, where you can look a couple of centuries ahead, the decision which we are taking now, everyone is suggesting certain decisions, what impact that will have. And I think two parameters I would suggest that it should not create more disasters, or it should prevent current disasters as well. Like whatever buckwheat or anything else you're planting, is it going to help reduce flash floods in Meghalaya or anything else? So I think certain things need to be put in a longer term perspective.
Jaivir, you want to respond to that and make your final comment also, so that we'll go around?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just a response to the question, and I think that the lens that you're using is a DRR lens. And the word that I'll start with is the word that you started with, which is dynamic. I think if you look at climate modeling and with the amount of data that we had 20 years ago, you compare it to 10 years ago and you look at it now, things have changed drastically. So I don't think that if you today start doing something which is modeling for 100 years from now, you are going to get it right. I think this is a consistent and constant process because the world is dynamic in that sense and things will change. So I think there's not a one size that I can say it today and it will be relevant 100 years from now. So I think we just need to consistently be doing it. My quick comment just is if you think about this panel, if I think about the people in this room, the collaborative innovations that are available, we've got enough research and enough solutions available to us. It's the pilot to scale example that I want to stress on, and I'm pointing the finger back at us in the private sector because we have the skills and the resources to be able to make that happen. So how can we create more of those platforms which do the thinking, but also collaborate for action? Thank you.
Thank you, Jaivir. Stefania, final comment?
I think that we have everything in our hands. I mean, sometimes I think that tradition is innovation, and we can use tradition as innovation.
Thank you.
That's it.
Akanksha, final comment?
I think just an offer of help and desire to collaborate with Meghalaya as the world needs more examples of a net zero nature positive economy. I think Meghalaya can really show the way. So let us know how the World Economic Forum and this panel can work with all of you.
Thank you, Akanksha. Kumar, final comment?
I'm responding to the gentleman from World Bank, and he said about low volume and high value crops. In fact, Meghalaya was possibly the first northeastern state to have picked this theme as central to its agriculture policy 20 years ago. In fact, we started off with strawberry, and today we are the third largest producer of strawberry. Secondly, we also have gone into shiitake. No other state in the country has even stepped into that. So these models have started giving us the results. In fact, for your kind information, Meghalaya's per capita farmers' income is the highest in the country. We have beaten Punjab twice over.
Thank you very much, the panelists, for sticking to time and making valuable contributions. I found it engaging and interesting and insightful. I hope all of you found it engaging, insightful, and interesting. We look forward to continued conversations. I think all of our email addresses are available somewhere, easily available. So look forward to continued conversations with all of you. Thank you all for participating.